He who is not a slave to his own passions is master of his life. Epictetus. What if I told you that the biggest reason women don't fully respect you has nothing to do with your looks, money, or status, but everything to do with the boundaries you don't set? Most men are taught to be agreeable, available, and endlessly accommodating. You reply instantly. You over-explain. You tolerate disrespect just to keep the peace. And slowly, almost invisibly, you lose leverage, confidence, and self-respect. Women sense it before you do. Here's the hard truth. Respect is not demanded, chased, or negotiated. It's enforced through boundaries. The men women naturally respect aren't louder, meaner, or more dominant. They're grounded, calm, unmovable. They know when to say yes, and more importantly, when to say no without guilt or fear of losing approval. In this video, you'll learn 10 powerful boundaries rooted in Stoic wisdom that instantly shift how women see you and how you see yourself. These aren't manipulative tricks or dating hacks. These are internal rules that project strength, emotional control, and quiet authority. Watch this video till the very end because the final boundaries are the most uncomfortable, but also the most transformative. Miss them and you'll stay where you are. Master them and respect becomes automatic. Number 1, you don't tolerate disrespect, ever. There is a quiet line you draw the moment you decide that disrespect no longer has a place in your life, and once that line exists, everything changes. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply. You stop negotiating with behavior that diminishes you. You stop explaining why you deserve basic regard, and that internal shift is felt long before it is spoken. The Stoics understood this well. Wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Notice what he's pointing to. Not retaliation, not anger, self-command. When you refuse to tolerate disrespect, you're not trying to control others. You're controlling yourself, and that is where real respect begins. Disrespect often survives because it's tolerated in small doses. A comment brushed off, a boundary softened, a moment ignored because you didn't want tension. But each time you allow it, you train others on how to treat you, and worse, you train yourself to accept less than you should. Stoicism teaches that your dignity is non-negotiable because it comes from within. Epictetus was blunt about this. If you want to be invincible, make yourself independent of what others can take away. Disrespect only lands when you hand it permission. The moment you withdraw that permission, it loses its power. This boundary isn't about becoming cold or aggressive. It's about being immovable, calm, grounded. When disrespect shows up, you don't flinch, overreact, or plead to be understood. You simply don't engage with what violates your standards. That restraint is magnetic. People sense when you are not operating from fear of loss. Respect is drawn to certainty, not emotional volatility. And certainty comes from knowing where you stand, even if it costs you approval. Stoicism reminds you that your worth is not up for debate. Seneca said, "He who does not know how to say no will never be respected." Saying no doesn't require anger. It requires clarity. You don't need long explanations or dramatic exits. You need alignment between what you tolerate externally and what you believe internally. When those two match, your presence changes. You stop shrinking to keep peace. You stop absorbing what isn't yours to carry. And that self-respect becomes visible without you saying a word. There's also a deeper layer here. When you tolerate disrespect, it's often because you fear isolation, rejection, or misunderstanding. Stoicism challenges that fear directly. Wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." The discomfort of enforcing boundaries is temporary. The cost of abandoning them is permanent. Every time you choose short-term comfort over long-term self-respect, you weaken your own foundation. But every time you stand firm, even quietly, you reinforce who you are becoming. This boundary forces you to raise your internal standards first. You cannot demand respect from others if you don't practice it with yourself. That means no self-betrayal, no laughing at what crosses your values, no minimizing your reactions to seem easygoing. Stoicism isn't about suppressing your inner compass, it's about refining it. You learn to observe your emotions without being ruled by them, but you also learn to honor the signals they send. Disrespect registers as tension for a reason. It's your values alerting you, listen. Adopting this boundary requires daily discipline. Start with awareness. Pay attention to what makes you feel smaller, irritated, or internally conflicted. Don't judge it, just note it. That awareness alone sharpens your presence. Next, practice the pause. When something crosses the line, don't rush to react or explain. Breathe. Stoics believed in creating space between stimulus and response. That space is where your power lives. In that pause, remind yourself, I do not need to tolerate this to be accepted. Then comes action, and action doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's withdrawal, sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a firm, simple statement with no emotional charge attached. The exercise here is consistency. Boundaries only work when they are predictable. Inconsistency invites testing. Clarity shuts it down. Seneca wrote, "A man who has no self-control cannot be free." Each time you enforce this boundary, you strengthen self-control, and with it, your sense of freedom. Another powerful practice is negative visualization, a core Stoic exercise. Briefly imagine what your life looks like if you continue tolerating disrespect. Feel the slow erosion of confidence. Then imagine the alternative, not praise or admiration, but internal peace, stability, alignment. Let that contrast guide your behavior. This isn't about dominance, it's about self-possession. Respect follows those who are at home within themselves. Over time, you'll notice something important. You'll stop attracting behavior that tests your limits, not because you threaten consequences, but because your energy no longer invites it. People respond to the standards you embody, not the rules you recite. When you don't tolerate disrespect, ever, you communicate that your time, attention, and presence are valuable. That alone elevates how others treat you. Remember, Stoicism never asks you to seek validation. It asks you to become worthy of your own approval. Said, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Being strict with yourself means refusing to abandon your values for comfort. It means choosing dignity even when it feels inconvenient, especially then. This boundary is not about controlling outcomes. It's about controlling character. Practice this daily. End each day with a short reflection. Ask yourself, where did I honor my standards today? Where did I compromise them? No guilt, no shame, just adjustment. This is how strength is built quietly, repetition by repetition. And as that strength solidifies, respect stops being something you chase. It becomes something you naturally command because it starts with how you treat yourself when no one else is watching. Number 2, you don't your decisions. There is a quiet authority that appears the moment you stop explaining yourself to death. You feel it first before anyone else notices it. Your shoulders drop, your breath slows, your words become fewer but heavier. When you don't your decisions, you communicate something deeper than logic. You signal self-trust. And nothing commands respect faster than a man who trusts his own judgment. Wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice how much restraint is baked into that sentence. No justification, no defense, just alignment. That's the energy you're stepping into when you stop trying to convince others that your choices make sense. Often comes from a hidden place. It's not about clarity, it's about permission. It's the subtle hope that if you say enough, soften enough, justify enough, someone will approve. But Stoicism cuts straight through that impulse. Epictetus reminded us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, stop trying to manage how you are perceived. When you explain every move, every boundary, every decision, you hand your power outward. You turn your life into a committee meeting. Respect fades when your certainty fades, and certainty disappears the moment you ask others to validate what you already decided. When you don't, you create psychological space. Space invites curiosity. Space suggests confidence. You're not hiding, you're simply not negotiating your values. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you grounded. You begin to speak from a place of decision rather than defense. Shorter sentences, fewer emotional spikes, calm delivery. That calm is felt before it is understood. Stoics believed that tranquility was proof of inner order. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." And freedom begins when you stop being trapped by the need to be understood by everyone. There's also an emotional boundary at play here, is often emotional leakage. You give away too much inner material too fast. When you hold back, not out of fear but out of self-respect, your presence becomes more solid. You don't rush to fill silence, you let it breathe. Silence, when paired with certainty, is not awkward, it's commanding. You start to realize that most explanations are not required. Your actions, consistency, and tone already say enough. Stoicism teaches you to live in a way that needs fewer words. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, wrote. The same applies here. Waste no more breath explaining your decisions. Stand in them. This boundary also trains your nervous system. When you stop rehearsing anxiety. You no longer scan faces for approval. You don't rush to soften your stance. You stay regulated. That regulation is felt as confidence. You're not reactive. You're responsive, or sometimes not responsive at all. And that's important. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every challenge deserves engagement. Stoicism is selective energy management. You conserve yourself. You choose where to speak and where to remain still. That selectiveness is magnetic because it suggests depth. To adopt this habit, start with awareness. Catch yourself in the moment your voice speeds up, your sentences stack, and your reasoning spills out. Pause, breathe once, then shorten your response by half. Say what needs to be said and stop there. This is a practice, not a performance. You will feel discomfort at first. That discomfort is withdrawal from validation. Stay with it. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from desiring nothing outside your control. Other people's understanding is not in your control. Your clarity is. Another exercise is written restraint. Each morning, write one clear intention for the day, one sentence, no explanations, just a decision. Train your mind to be decisive on paper so it becomes decisive in speech. Then practice deliberate silence. Choose one interaction a day where you speak less than usual and observe the effect. Not to manipulate, but to ground yourself. Notice how your presence changes when you're not filling space with reasons. You can also rehearse non-reactivity. When questioned internally, remind yourself, I do not owe access to my reasoning. Repeat it until it feels natural. This isn't arrogance, it's self-respect. Stoics were not concerned with being liked, they were concerned with being aligned. When you are aligned, respect follows without force. Over time, this boundary reshapes how you see yourself. You stop performing intelligence and start embodying wisdom. You stop trying to be persuasive and start being firm. Your decisions become quieter but stronger, and that strength is sensed. Seneca said, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary," is a form of premature suffering. You argue battles that were never declared. You defend choices that were never attacked. Let that go. You don't need to announce your confidence. You demonstrate it by how little you need to say. When you stop, you stand taller in your own mind first. And when that happens, others feel it. Not because you demanded respect, but because you no longer asked for permission to exist as you are. Number 3, you prioritize your purpose over approval. There is a quiet shift that happens the moment you stop asking for permission to be who you are meant to be. It's not loud, it doesn't announce itself, but it changes everything. When you prioritize your purpose over approval, You step out of the exhausting cycle of trying to be liked and step into the far more powerful state of being respected. Put it simply, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice how there is no mention of how others might react. No concern for applause. Purpose doesn't negotiate with approval. It moves forward whether it is cheered or questioned. Most people live with their compass turned outward. They measure their choices by reactions, expressions, validation, and feedback. And slowly, without realizing it, they hand over control of their identity. You feel this when you hesitate before speaking your truth, when you adjust your actions to avoid discomfort in others, when you sense that subtle tension of wanting to be accepted more than you want to be aligned. Stoicism calls this a form of inner slavery. Epictetus warned, if you want to be invincible, make no treaty with anything that is not in your control. Approval is never in your control. Purpose is. When you choose purpose first, you send a powerful signal without saying a word. You communicate that your life has direction, and that direction does not bend for temporary reassurance. This is not arrogance. It is self-respect in motion. Respect grows when people sense that you are guided by something internal and stable, not by emotional weather. You stop explaining yourself excessively. You stop justifying your boundaries. You stop reshaping your priorities to fit into someone else's expectations. And paradoxically, the less you seek approval, the more naturally it arrives. This boundary reshapes how you carry yourself. Your time becomes intentional. Your energy becomes guarded. You are no longer available for everything, and that scarcity isn't manufactured, it's earned. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Bravery here doesn't mean confrontation. It means choosing the long term over the immediate. It means disappointing others rather than betraying yourself. Each time you choose your purpose over approval, you reinforce an identity that does not need constant reassurance to stay steady. There will be moments when this feels uncomfortable. Purpose doesn't always feel good in the short term. Sometimes it feels lonely. Sometimes it feels misunderstood. But Stoicism teaches you to zoom out, to judge actions not by their emotional comfort but by their alignment with virtue and reason. Ask yourself regularly, is this choice moving me closer to the person I respect? Not the person others applaud, the person you can stand behind when you're alone. That question cuts through confusion like a blade. Approval seeking creates hidden contracts. You say yes when you mean no. You delay action waiting for reassurance. You dilute your standards to avoid friction. Purpose dissolves those contracts. It gives you permission to act cleanly, decisively, calmly. Reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Prioritizing purpose is an internal decision, repeated daily, often quietly, especially when no one is watching. To live this boundary, you must train it. Start with a daily clarity exercise. Each morning, write one sentence answering this. What must I move toward today, even if it costs me approval? Keep it simple. Don't dramatize it. Let it be grounded and practical. Then act on it without announcing it. Purpose grows stronger when it is practiced, not performed. Another practice is intentional silence. When you feel the urge to explain yourself unnecessarily, pause, breathe. Ask whether the explanation serves truth or simply seeks comfort. Often, silence is the stronger choice. Stoicism values restraint because restraint communicates confidence. Epictetus advised, be mostly silent or speak merely what is necessary. This applies not just to words, but to justifications. You do not owe the world constant explanations for your alignment. Train detachment from outcomes. Do the work, make the decision, hold the boundary, then release the reaction. This is difficult at first because the mind wants feedback. It wants reassurance that you're doing the right thing. But Stoicism teaches outcome independence. You judge yourself by effort and intention, not by response. This is how purpose becomes unshakable. This is how confidence stops being performative and starts being embodied. You'll also need to redefine respect internally. Respect is not always agreement, it's not constant validation. Often it felt before it's expressed. When you prioritize purpose, you may notice fewer words but more weight behind them. Less attention but more gravity. That's a trade worth making. Seneca said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." Extend that idea inward. Associate your actions with values that improve you. Remind yourself regularly that approval is fleeting. It changes with mood, context, and convenience. Purpose endures, purpose compounds. Every time you choose it, you become more centered, more grounded, more precise. And that precision is felt. It creates a natural authority, not dominance, not force. Authority rooted in consistency. End each day with reflection. Ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I choose purpose today? Where did I trade it for comfort? What will I adjust tomorrow? This is a Stoic ritual of self-audit. No guilt, no shame, just honesty. Growth thrives in honest environments. When you live this way, respect is no longer something you chase. It becomes a side effect, a response to your internal order. You stop trying to be impressive and start being intentional. And that shift changes how you are perceived at every level. As wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Prioritize your purpose. Let approval do what it wants. You have work to do." Number 4, you say no without guilt or apology. One of the most powerful shifts you will ever make is learning to say no without guilt, without explanations, without apologizing for existing. Not a harsh no. Not an angry one, just a calm, grounded refusal that comes from self-respect. Most men never master this, and it quietly drains their confidence. They say yes when they mean no. They overextend. They negotiate their own boundaries in the hope of being liked. And Stoicism cuts straight through that weakness. Epictetus said it clearly. If you want to be invincible, make sure that no one can compel you to act against your will. Saying no without guilt is exactly that, invincibility from the inside out. When you say no cleanly, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop betraying yourself. Every guilty yes is a small act of self-abandonment. Over time, those betrayals pile up and people, especially women, sense it. They may not consciously articulate it, but they feel the lack of inner authority. Respect fades when you don't respect your own limits. The Stoics understood this deeply, reminded himself, reverence yourself, not occasionally, not when it's convenient, always. And reverence begins with honoring your time, energy, and values without needing permission. You don't owe anyone constant access to you. You don't owe endless availability. You don't owe emotional labor just because you're capable of giving it. Saying no without guilt means you've accepted a difficult truth. Not everyone will like your boundaries, and that's not your problem to solve. This is where most men stumble. They confuse kindness with compliance. But Stoicism teaches strength with benevolence, not weakness disguised as politeness. Seneca warned, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." If you are constantly saying yes, you are scattered, diluted, and predictable. When you say no with calm certainty, your presence gains weight. There is also something deeply attractive about a man who doesn't over-explain himself. Explanations often come from insecurity, not courtesy. When you rush to justify your no, you're subconsciously asking for approval. You're signaling that your decision needs to be validated. A guilt-free no says the opposite. It says, "I've thought this through. I trust myself." That trust is felt. Respect follows naturally because boundaries communicate self-worth far louder than words ever could. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or cold. Stoicism is not emotional shutdown, it's emotional mastery. You can be warm and still say no. You can be respectful without being submissive. You can be considerate without being self-sacrificing. Wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." A good man does not overcommit and then resent it. He chooses deliberately. He declines deliberately too. Saying no without guilt also reshapes how you see yourself. Each time you do it, your nervous system learns that you are safe even without approval. That's huge. Many men are trapped in approval-seeking patterns they don't even realize are running their lives. Stoicism breaks that pattern by teaching you to anchor your worth internally. Epictetus put it simply, if you seek tranquility, do less. Fewer obligations, fewer forced agreements, fewer unnecessary yeses. Peace grows in that space. Now let's make this practical, because philosophy without action is just decoration. Start with awareness. For 1 week, notice every time you feel an urge to say yes automatically. Pause. Ask yourself one question. Do I genuinely want to do this, or am I trying to avoid discomfort? That pause alone begins rewiring you. Stoics called this the discipline of assent, choosing which impulses deserve your agreement. You don't have to act on every request just because it appears. Next, practice short, clean refusals. No long stories, no emotional cushioning. A simple no delivered calmly trains both you and the other person. Your tone matters more than your words. Say it slowly, steady voice, relaxed body. This is crucial. Respect is felt through how you carry the no, not the vocabulary you use. Advised, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Be strict about not. Then train discomfort on purpose. Guilt is just an emotion, not a command. Let it rise without obeying it. Sit with it. Observe it. Stoicism teaches that emotions are impressions, not orders. They pass if you don't feed them. Each time you withstand that brief discomfort, your confidence expands. You prove to yourself that you don't collapse when you choose yourself. That proof changes your posture, your presence, your energy. Another exercise, define your non-negotiables. Write down what you protect: your time, your routines, your values, your rest. If you don't define them, others will unknowingly test them. Clarity makes saying no easier because you're not improvising in the moment. You're enforcing a standard you've already chosen. Seneca believed clarity was freedom. A man who knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Know your port. As you practice this, something interesting happens. People begin to adjust. They may not always like your boundaries, but they will respect them. And those who do, their absence creates space for better dynamics. Stoicism teaches acceptance without attachment. You don't cling, you don't chase, you remain steady. That steadiness is deeply attractive because it signals emotional maturity. Most importantly, remember this: saying no without guilt is not about pushing people away. It's about standing firmly in who you are. It's about alignment. When your words, actions, and values line up, you radiate quiet confidence. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to demand respect. It's already there. So start today. Say one no that you would normally soften or avoid. Say it calmly, say it cleanly, let the discomfort pass. And remind yourself of words. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength shows up first in moments like these. Small decisions, quiet refusals, no guilt, no apology, just self-respect practiced daily. Number 5, you don't chase attention or validation. There is a quiet power in not chasing attention, and once you feel it, you realize how much energy you wasted before trying to be seen, heard, approved of. When you stop running after validation, something fundamental shifts in you. Your posture changes. Your words slow down. Your presence becomes heavier, more grounded. Captured this perfectly when he wrote, "I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others." Read that slowly. When you no longer outsource your worth, you step out of that trap, and people feel it instantly. You don't chase attention because you no longer need it to confirm who you are. That neediness, even when it's subtle, always leaks through. It shows up in trying too hard to be liked, in adjusting yourself to fit the room. When you let that go, you stop performing. You start standing. Stoicism teaches you that approval is outside your control, and anything outside your control should never be the foundation of your confidence. Epictetus was blunt about this. If you want to be invincible, make sure that no one has the power to disturb your inner peace. Chasing validation hands that power away. Refusing to chase it takes it back. When you stop seeking attention, you begin to move from inner fullness instead of inner lack. This is where respect is born, not demanded, not negotiated, felt. You are no longer scanning faces for reactions or measuring your value by responses. You speak because you mean something, not because you want something. Silence no longer scares you, it supports you. And this calm self-sufficiency is deeply grounding. People trust it instinctively, even if they can't explain why. This boundary also forces you to confront yourself honestly. Without validation as a crutch, you have to develop standards, real ones. You start asking, do I respect this choice? Instead of, will this impress someone? That shift is everything. Seneca warned about the danger of applause when he said, the approval of the crowd is the worst proof of merit. When you absorb that lesson, your life becomes cleaner. Your decisions feel less cluttered. You stop negotiating with your conscience. There is also a deep confidence that grows when you no longer feel the urge to prove yourself. Confidence isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't seek confirmation. It simply exists. And the irony is, the moment you stop chasing attention, attention often follows. Not because you're trying to attract it, but because you've become self-contained. You're not pulling energy from others anymore. You're generating it. This boundary demands discipline, though. Your mind has been trained for years to seek external signals of worth. Likes, replies, praise, interest. Breaking that habit requires daily practice. Stoicism never promised comfort, it promised freedom. And freedom always asks something from you. Start by noticing when you feel the impulse to seek reassurance. Don't judge it, observe it. Advised, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Each time you resist that impulse, even for a moment, you strengthen that power. A simple exercise: for one full day, say nothing that is designed to impress. Speak only when your words add clarity, truth, or calm. Let go of the urge to be interesting. Focus on being centered. At the end of the day, reflect on how it felt. Uncomfortable at first, maybe, but also lighter, more honest. This is how the habit breaks. Another practice is voluntary invisibility. Choose moments where you could seek attention and deliberately don't. No announcements, no explanations, no fishing for reactions, just action. Seneca believed in training the mind through deliberate restraint because self-control is the foundation of dignity. You don't need to be seen to be solid. You don't need to be praised to be powerful. When you live this way, respect becomes a byproduct, not a goal. People sense that you are not trying to extract anything from them. That absence of need creates safety and intrigue at the same time. You are not bending. You are not grasping. You are standing firmly in your own frame, and that frame is clear, calm, and unshaken. This boundary also protects you. When you don't chase validation, you stop and overcommitting. You don't betray yourself just to stay relevant. You become harder to manipulate because your worth is not up for negotiation. As Epictetus taught, no man is free who is not master of himself. Attention addiction is a form of slavery. Freedom begins the moment you say, I am enough without this. Make this your daily reminder. You don't need to be chosen to choose yourself. You don't need approval to move forward. You don't need attention to matter. Sit with that truth. Repeat it. Act from it. Over time, it settles into your behavior, your posture, your presence. And once it does, respect is no longer something you seek. It's something that naturally meets you where you stand. This is not about withdrawal or indifference. It's about sovereignty. You are calm, open, grounded, but not dependent. You engage without clinging. You care without chasing. And that balance is rare. Stoicism wasn't designed to make you cold, it was designed to make you unshakable. When you stop chasing attention and validation, you embody that strength quietly, consistently, and unmistakably. Number 6. You walk away from manipulation or mind games. Walking away from manipulation or mind games isn't weakness. It's not avoidance. It's not fear. It's one of the clearest expressions of inner strength you can develop, and people feel it immediately, especially women. The moment you stop engaging in confusion, mixed signals, emotional tests, or subtle power plays, something shifts in how you're perceived. You're no longer reactive. You're no longer trying to win. You're no longer trying to decode every behavior. You're choosing peace over chaos, clarity over drama, self-respect over emotional gambling. And that choice speaks louder than any clever words ever could. Stoicism has always warned against giving others power over your inner state. Epictetus said it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Walking away from manipulation often looks foolish to those who rely on it. They expect engagement, they expect reaction, they expect you to chase clarity, validation, or emotional resolution. When you don't, when you simply disengage without bitterness or explanation, you demonstrate something rare: self-mastery. You're showing that your time, attention, and emotional energy are not up for negotiation. Respect naturally follows that. Mind games only work on people who stay seated at the table. The strongest move is standing up and leaving without flipping it over. You don't argue. You don't explain yourself into exhaustion. You don't seek fairness from someone committed to confusion. Wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That's exactly what you're doing here. You refuse to mirror manipulation with manipulation. You refuse to descend into emotional theatrics. You remain grounded, composed, and self-directed. That contrast alone elevates you. When you adopt this boundary, you also begin to trust yourself more deeply. You stop second-guessing your instincts. You stop rationalizing behavior that makes you uneasy. Stoicism teaches that your perceptions matter, but your reactions matter more. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens, Epictetus advised. What's in your power is whether you stay or leave, whether you engage or disengage, whether you tolerate uncertainty designed to control you. Walking away is you exercising that power cleanly, without noise. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you don't need to win every interaction. You don't need closure. You don't need to prove a point. You don't need to be chosen. When manipulation appears and you remove yourself calmly, you send a message without speaking. You are not dependent. You are not easily hooked. You are not available for emotional tug-of-war. That steadiness is deeply attractive because it signals emotional adulthood. It tells the world you operate from principles, not impulses. This boundary also reshapes your internal world. You stop living in anticipation mode, waiting for the next signal, the next test, the next shift in tone. Your nervous system relaxes. Your mind clears. You regain focus on your own path. Seneca warned, "A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." Mind games thrive on anticipation and anxiety. By walking away, you cut off unnecessary suffering at the root. You choose simplicity, and simplicity is strength. Adopting this habit requires discipline, not bravado. The urge to stay and figure things out can be strong. The ego wants resolution. The ego wants to be understood. But Stoicism asks you to rise above the ego's hunger. Reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Manipulation is an outside event. Your response is internal. When you walk away, you're practicing that truth in real time. This boundary also forces you to clarify your standards. You begin to define what behavior you accept and what you don't, without needing permission. You stop negotiating your values in moments of emotional tension. That consistency builds integrity. And integrity is magnetic. People may not always like it, but they respect it. Respect grows when your actions align with your inner rules, especially when no one is watching. Now let's make this practical. Start with a mental rehearsal. Stoics called this imagining challenges before they arise. Visualize moments where confusion, pressure, or emotional provocation appears. In that visualization, see yourself choosing calm disengagement. No speeches, no explanations, just clarity. This trains your nervous system to respond rather than react. Next, practice the pause. When something feels off, don't rush to interpret it. Pause for a full breath. Ask yourself one question: is engaging here aligned with my self-respect? If the answer is no, you already know what to do. Walking away doesn't require justification. It requires conviction. Another exercise is journaling with precision. At the end of the day, write one paragraph answering this. Where did I protect my peace today, and where did I compromise it? Don't judge the answer. Observe it. Awareness sharpens boundaries. Over time, you'll notice patterns, and patterns give you leverage over your own behavior. Also, train voluntary emotional restraint. Choose not to respond immediately, even when you could. Delay replies. Sit with discomfort without filling the silence. This isn't manipulation on your part, it's discipline. Seneca believed that restraint was a form of freedom. The less compelled you are to react, the freer you become. Understand this clearly. Walking away is not about control over others. It's about sovereignty over yourself. You're not trying to teach anyone a lesson. You're not trying to appear mysterious. You're simply refusing to betray your inner order for temporary emotional stimulation. That's Stoic strength in its form. Over time, this boundary changes how you move through the world. You become less reactive, more selective, more grounded. You stop chasing clarity from people who thrive on confusion. You stop investing in dynamics that require you to abandon your center. And people feel that shift. They sense that you cannot be pulled into chaos. That alone commands respect. Said, be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it. Walking away from manipulation is you becoming that headland. Calm, unmoved, solid, not cold, not distant, just anchored. This boundary doesn't make you unavailable to connection. It makes you unavailable to games. And that distinction matters. The more consistently you honor it, the more your confidence becomes quiet, your presence becomes steady, and your respect becomes unavoidable. Not because you demand it, but because you live in a way that makes anything less impossible to accept. Number 7, you set clear standards for how you're treated. Setting clear standards for how you're treated is not about controlling anyone or demanding obedience. It's about deciding calmly and firmly what you will and will not accept in your life. And here's the part most people miss. Respect doesn't begin when others change their behavior. It begins the moment you stop negotiating your self-worth. You don't announce your standards loudly. You live them quietly. As said, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. In other words, you don't react, chase, or explain yourself into exhaustion. You simply choose differently. That choice alone shifts how you're perceived. When your standards are clear, your energy changes. You're no longer trying to be liked at the cost of your peace. You're no longer tolerating subtle disrespect just to keep the connection alive. And people can feel that. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're settled. You're not hopping to be treated well. You expect it. That expectation isn't arrogance, it's alignment. Stoicism teaches that dignity is an internal posture before it ever becomes an external boundary. Epictetus put it simply, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Translation: stop bending your standards just to avoid discomfort. Let misunderstanding happen. Let silence happen. Your self-respect is worth more than temporary approval. Clear standards start with clarity inside your own mind. If you don't know what behavior you accept, you'll accept almost anything. You'll rationalize, you'll excuse, you'll overextend. And the moment you do that, respect erodes, not because others are cruel, but because you taught them what's allowed. Stoicism asks you to take responsibility here, not blame. Ask yourself, without drama or self-judgment, what drains you, what disrespects your time, what crosses your emotional limits. Write it down. Not as rules for others, but as commitments to yourself. Reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Your standards are an expression of that power. What makes standards powerful is consistency, not intensity. You don't need speeches. You don't need ultimatums. You need follow-through. When your words and actions match, something clicks. You stop explaining why something bothers you. You simply remove yourself from what doesn't align. That calm withdrawal speaks louder than confrontation ever could. It signals that your time and energy are not endlessly available. And scarcity, when it's rooted in self-respect rather than manipulation, naturally commands respect. A key shift happens when you stop seeing boundaries as walls and start seeing them as filters. They're not there to keep people out. They're there to let the right behavior in. This mindset removes bitterness. You're not punishing anyone, you're honoring yourself. Seneca wrote, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." When you tolerate poor treatment, you suffer twice. Once in the moment and again afterward when you feel disappointed in yourself. Clear standards end that cycle. They simplify your life. They reduce internal conflict, and that inner simplicity shows on the outside as confidence. You may notice resistance at first. When you change how you show up, others have to recalibrate. Some will respect you more. Some will drift away. Both outcomes are useful. Stoicism teaches acceptance without attachment. You don't cling to outcomes. You commit to principles. If someone only stays when your standards are low, their absence is not a loss, it's confirmation. Wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change." Notice the confidence there. He wasn't afraid of correction because his identity wasn't fragile. Build that same inner security. Let your standards be firm but flexible, grounded in values, not ego. To embody this, practice small acts of self-alignment daily. One simple exercise: pause before agreeing to anything. Give yourself a breath. Ask, does this respect my time, energy, and values? If the answer is no, practice saying less, not more. You don't owe explanations for every decision. Silence, when chosen consciously, is a boundary. Another practice: notice where you feel resentment. Resentment is often a sign you've crossed your own standards. Don't suppress it. Use it as feedback. Adjust your behavior, not your self-respect. Train yourself to be comfortable with temporary discomfort. Setting standards will feel awkward if you're used to over-accommodating. That discomfort is not danger, it's growth. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from self-mastery, not external approval. Each time you hold a standard without apologizing for it, you reinforce an identity, someone who trusts himself. And that trust is magnetic. It shows up in your posture, your tone, your decisions. You're no longer trying to manage perceptions. You're managing alignment. Remember, respect isn't demanded, it's evoked. And it's evoked when your behavior communicates consistently that you value yourself. You don't chase clarity, you embody it. You don't argue for better treatment. You move in ways that assume it. Over time, this becomes effortless. Not because people suddenly become perfect, but because you stop placing yourself in positions where disrespect thrives. End each day with a brief Stoic reflection. Ask yourself, where did I honor my standards today? Where did I compromise them? No shame, no overthinking, just awareness. Improvement follows awareness naturally. As said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Set your standards. Live them. Let your presence do the talking. Number 8. You control your emotions under pressure. One of the most powerful boundaries you can ever build is emotional control under pressure, because it quietly tells the world, and especially women, that you are not governed by chaos. You are governed by principle. When pressure rises and emotions surge, most people leak their inner state through their reactions. You don't. And that difference is felt instantly. The Stoics understood this deeply. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's sensed. When you remain steady while tension tries to pull you off center, you communicate something primal. You are safe in yourself. You don't need to dominate, explain, or prove. You simply stand. Emotional control is not suppression. That's an important distinction. You're not pretending you feel nothing. You're choosing not to be ruled by what you feel. There's a difference between feeling anger and being anger, between sensing frustration and acting from it. When you learn this separation, you stop being predictable. And predictability driven by emotion is what erodes respect. Epictetus warned, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In modern terms, that means being willing to pause instead of react, even if silence feels awkward, even if restraint feels misunderstood. You stop rushing to defend your ego. You stop explaining yourself into weakness. You let your composure speak. Under pressure, your nervous system becomes your boundary. If it's untrained, you leak insecurity through tone, posture, words, and timing. If it's trained, you radiate calm authority without trying. This is why emotional regulation is attractive. It signals competence at the deepest level. You are telling others without words that stress does not control your behavior. And when a man is not controlled by his inner storms, he is trusted with influence. Respect grows naturally around him, because people feel that he won't collapse, explode, or beg when things don't go his way. Stoicism teaches you to slow the space between stimulus and response. That space is where your power lives. Most people never step into it. They react instantly, driven by impulse, habit, or fear of losing approval. You don't, you breathe, you observe, you decide. Seneca wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Delay is not weakness. Delay is mastery. When pressure hits and you don't immediately speak, justify, or react, you reclaim authorship over your behavior. That alone sets you apart. This boundary also changes how you see yourself. When you consistently regulate your emotions, your self-respect deepens. You begin to trust yourself. You know that no matter what happens externally, you won't abandon your standards internally. That trust is magnetic. Women don't respect men who are emotionally perfect. They respect men who are emotionally disciplined. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you won't say things you regret just to release tension. You won't chase relief at the cost of dignity. You won't negotiate your values just to feel better in the moment. Pressure reveals structure. When emotions run high, whatever you've built inside shows up. Stoicism asks you to build that structure deliberately. Start by practicing emotional labeling. When intensity rises, name the sensation internally without judgment. Not stories, not accusations, just sensations. This immediately creates distance. You're no longer drowning in the feeling, you're observing it. Did this repeatedly in his writings, breaking experiences down into their raw components so they lost their grip. Practice this daily, especially in small moments. Don't wait for extremes. Mastery is built in repetition. Another exercise is negative rehearsal, a core Stoic practice. Spend a few minutes imagining pressure without drama, not just calmly acknowledging that discomfort, rejection, or tension may arise. When it does, you won't be surprised. Surprise is what hijacks emotional control. Familiarity restores it. Seneca believed that rehearsing adversity makes you immune to its shock. When pressure actually arrives, you recognize it, and recognition brings calm. You also strengthen this boundary by training your breath. The breath is the fastest way to communicate safety to your nervous system. Slow, Controlled breathing under stress tells your body there is no immediate threat. This isn't mystical, it's practical. A man who can regulate his breath can regulate his responses. Make it a habit to lengthen your exhale when tension appears. This simple act reinforces the identity of someone who stays grounded no matter the emotional weather. Emotional control also means letting go of the need to win every moment. You don't correct every misunderstanding. You don't chase every reaction. You don't demand immediate validation. This restraint signals abundance, not scarcity. Epictetus said, "If you wish to be invincible, make sure that no one can ever hurt you by their opinion." When pressure comes from disapproval or misunderstanding, you don't scramble to fix it. You let it pass. That composure creates respect because it shows you are not dependent on external approval to remain stable. Over time, this boundary reshapes your presence. Your words become fewer but heavier. Your silence becomes intentional, not awkward. You respond, you don't react. And people feel that difference before they understand it. Respect doesn't come from asserting dominance. It comes from demonstrating control, especially control over yourself. Women intuitively sense when a man's emotions run him, and they sense even faster when they don't. Remind yourself daily that pressure is not an enemy, it's training. Every moment of emotional restraint is a vote for the man you're becoming. You are not denying your feelings, you are refining your responses. Said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In modern terms, the best response to pressure is to become unshakable by it. Calm, clear, self-governed. This is not about becoming cold, it's about becoming centered. When you control your emotions under pressure, you establish a boundary that says, "I do not hand over my inner state to circumstances." And that boundary is felt as strength, maturity, and trustworthiness. Build it daily. Practice it deliberately. Let it become automatic. Because once emotional control becomes your default, respect no longer needs to be demanded. It arrives on its own. Number 9, you don't sacrifice self-respect for attraction. There's a quiet power in the moment you decide that attraction will never cost you your self-respect. Not today, not ever. Most people never make that decision consciously, and that's why they drift, bend, and negotiate with their own values whenever approval is on the line. But Stoicism draws a hard line here. Reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Notice how absolute that sounds. No conditions, no exceptions for attraction. When you internalize this, something shifts in you. You stop chasing reactions and start commanding presence. Respect begins there. When you refuse to sacrifice self-respect, you stop performing. You no longer edit yourself to be palatable. You don't soften your convictions or exaggerate your personality to keep someone interested. And paradoxically, this is what makes you magnetic. People can feel when you're anchored to something solid inside yourself. Epictetus was blunt about this when he said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Translation: you must be willing to risk disapproval to stay aligned with who you are. That willingness is rare, and rarity creates value. Self-respect is not loud. It doesn't announce itself or demand recognition. It shows up in what you refuse to tolerate, what you won't explain away, and what you won't chase. When attraction becomes your priority, your standards start to erode quietly. You laugh at things that don't sit right. You agree when you don't. You tolerate behavior that drains you. Each small compromise feels harmless, but together they teach others how to treat you. Stoicism teaches that character is built in these small, private decisions. How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? Epictetus asked. That question isn't rhetorical, it's a challenge. When you choose self-respect over attraction, you also reclaim your emotional leverage. You're no longer afraid of walking away, and that changes everything. Not because you threaten to leave, but because you genuinely can. You stop negotiating from scarcity. Seneca warned against this inner poverty when he wrote, He is most powerful who has power over himself. Emotional self-control is the backbone of respect. If your mood, confidence, or sense of worth depends on someone else's response, you've already given up the ground you're standing on. This boundary also reshapes how you communicate. You speak plainly, you don't over-explain, you don't apologize for existing or wanting what you want. You let silence do its work. Stoics understood silence as strength, not weakness. Practiced restraint constantly, reminding himself not to waste words. When you don't sacrifice self-respect, you stop filling space with nervous energy. You trust that what's meant for you doesn't require self-betrayal. There's a deeper layer here too. When you honor yourself, you invite others to rise to your level. Respect is not something you ask for, it's something your behavior makes unavoidable. And behavior is always more persuasive than intention. Stoicism is relentlessly practical in this way. It doesn't care what you claim to value. It cares what you do when it's inconvenient, especially when attraction tempts you to bend. You may notice resistance inside yourself when you start living this way. Old habits don't disappear quietly. Part of you might worry that standing firm will cost you connection. Stoicism doesn't deny that risk. It simply asks a better question. What is connection worth if it requires self-abandonment? Seneca put it cleanly, no man is free who is not master of himself. If attraction turns you into someone you don't respect, then even success feels hollow. Now, this isn't about becoming cold or distant. Self-respect doesn't mean indifference. It means intentional warmth. You choose when and how you invest. You give from abundance, not need. And that distinction is felt instantly. People respond differently to someone who chooses them rather than needs them. That choice is only possible when your identity is not up for negotiation. To live this boundary, you need practice. Start with a daily self-check. Ask yourself, did I say yes today when I meant no? Did I stay silent when I should have spoken? Did I act to be liked instead of acting to be aligned? Don't judge the answers. Observe them. Stoicism emphasizes awareness before correction. You can't change what you refuse to see. Next, practice deliberate pauses. When you feel the urge to impress, respond immediately or seek reassurance, pause for 5 seconds. Breathe. Let the impulse pass. This trains your nervous system to tolerate uncertainty without self-compromise. Epictetus taught that impulses lose their power when examined calmly. This pause is where self-respect is either reinforced or surrendered. Another exercise is value reinforcement. Write down 3 non-negotiable principles you commit to honoring regardless of attraction. Not outcomes, principles. Read them every morning. Wrote to himself constantly because he knew the mind forgets under pressure. You will too. This is how you remember. Finally, rehearse walking away mentally. Not from people, but from outcomes. Imagine choosing your dignity even if it leads to solitude. This isn't pessimism, it's Stoic preparation. Seneca believed that rehearsing loss makes you invincible to it. When you're no longer afraid of losing approval, you stop selling yourself cheaply. Here's the truth most people never hear. Attraction that requires self-disrespect is never sustainable. It might feel intense, but it erodes you from the inside. Real respect grows when you make it clear, through your actions, that you are not for sale, not your values, not your time, not your identity. So let this boundary become part of who you are, not as a rule you recite, but as a standard you embody. Attraction will come and go, respect stays. And when you choose self-respect consistently, you don't just become more respected by others. You become someone you can stand behind when you're alone with your thoughts. As wrote, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Guard those thoughts. Guard your standards. That's the kind of confidence no one can take from you. Number 10, you let actions speak louder than words. There is a quiet authority that settles around you when you stop explaining yourself. Not announcing, not persuading, not trying to be understood at every turn, just doing what you said you would do again and again without noise. This is where respect begins, not in clever words, not in promises, not in emotional speeches, but in alignment. The Stoics understood this deeply. Wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That single line carries more power than 1,000 explanations. When you let your actions speak louder than your words, you stop negotiating your value. You demonstrate it. Most people talk too much because they're unsure. They over-clarify, over-justify, overshare. You don't need to do that anymore. When your behavior is consistent, your silence becomes convincing. You don't argue for respect. You behave in ways that make disrespect feel out of place. This is a boundary that doesn't require confrontation. It's not aggressive. It's grounded. And it changes how people experience you, especially women. Because respect is not triggered by words meant to impress. It's triggered by reliability, composure, and self-command. Stoicism teaches that character is revealed in action, not intention. Epictetus put it bluntly, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. When you say less and do more, you remove doubt. Doubt lives in inconsistency. Respect grows in predictability of values, not predictability of behavior. You don't need to announce your standards. Your choices reveal them. You don't need to threaten boundaries. You enforce them calmly through what you tolerate and what you don't engage with. This is where your presence starts to carry weight. Letting actions speak also means you stop reacting emotionally in the moment. You don't rush to defend yourself. You don't rush to correct every misunderstanding. You don't rush to prove your intentions. You trust time and consistency to do that work for you. Seneca warned against impulsive speech when he said, "He who is quick to believe is quick to be deceived." The same applies to speaking. Slowness creates gravity. Restraint creates intrigue. When you move deliberately, people lean in. When you explain less, people observe more. And observation is where respect forms. This boundary also forces you to become honest with yourself. You can no longer hide behind words. You can't say you value discipline while avoiding effort. You can't claim confidence while acting inconsistently. Silence exposes gaps, and that's a gift, because now your growth becomes practical, not theoretical. You start asking better questions. What do my daily actions actually communicate? What patterns am I reinforcing without realizing it? Who am I training others to believe I am through repetition? When you let actions lead, you stop chasing approval. You don't fish for reassurance. You don't seek constant feedback. You do narrate your intentions in hopes of being validated. This independence is felt immediately. It signals emotional self-sufficiency. Stoicism holds self-mastery above external praise. Reminded himself, I do my duty, other things trouble me not. That mindset changes how you carry yourself. You act because it's right, not because it will be noticed. Ironically, that's when it's noticed most. There is also a deep confidence that grows here, one that doesn't spike or crash. You trust yourself because you've seen yourself follow through. You don't need to convince anyone of your reliability. You already know it. And when you know something internally, you don't argue for it externally. This is where boundaries become effortless. You don't explain why something isn't acceptable. You simply don't engage with what violates your standards. No speeches, no drama. Just quiet withdrawal or firm consistency. Now, this doesn't mean becoming cold or passive. It means being intentional. It means choosing when words add value and when they dilute it. Stoicism is not silence for silence's sake. It's disciplined expression. Say what needs to be said, then let behavior reinforce it. Say less, mean more. Over time, people stop testing you, not because you intimidated them, but because your actions made your limits clear. To build this boundary deliberately, start with one simple practice. Remove unnecessary explanations. Notice how often you justify your choices. Pause. Ask yourself if your actions can stand on their own. If they can, let them. This doesn't mean being rude, it means being concise, clarity without overexposure, strength without performance. Next, align your smallest habits with your values, not the big dramatic ones, the quiet, repetitive choices. Stoics believed excellence was built daily. Seneca wrote, "Every day we should make up our minds to be good." That goodness is not abstract, it's operational. Decide one behavior you will execute consistently, regardless of mood. Let that be your proof. Over time, consistency becomes your reputation. Another exercise, practice delayed response, not avoidance. Delay. When emotion rises, don't speak immediately. Let your actions later reflect your position. This trains emotional control and prevents reactive communication. Remember, boundaries enforced through calm behavior are stronger than those defended through heated words. Also, audit your promises. Reduce them. Keep fewer commitments and honor them completely. Words lose power when they're frequent and cheap. They gain power when they're rare and reliable. When you do speak, let it land because your actions have already established trust. Finally, remind yourself daily that respect is not negotiated, it's demonstrated. Say this internally: I don't need to explain who I am, I show it. Let that guide your behavior. Let it shape your pace, your responses, your silence. You are not here to convince. You are here to embody. When your actions speak, your boundaries become visible without confrontation. Your confidence becomes quiet but undeniable. And respect follows not because you demanded it, but because your behavior made it the only reasonable response. Before you click away, remember this. Respect isn't demanded, it's demonstrated. The boundaries you learn today aren't tricks or manipulation, they're standards. And the moment you start honoring your own time, energy, and values, the world, especially women, adjusts how it treats you. Most men stay stuck because they know these ideas but never live them. Don't be that guy. Pick one boundary from this video and apply it today, just one. Watch how your confidence shifts. Watch how conversations change. Watch how respect starts to feel natural, not forced. If this video gave you even a single moment of clarity, make sure you like it. It tells the algorithm to show this message to men who need it. Subscribe if you're serious about building calm confidence, self-respect, and real attraction without chasing validation. And here's the truth most won't tell you. The men who win in life aren't louder, flashier, or more aggressive. They're grounded. They know when to say yes and, more importantly, when to walk away. Stay disciplined, stay grounded. And I'll see you in the next one.